On this most solemn of occasions, O Lord our God, we open our hearts, minds, and souls to you. Let us remember the 6 million Jews and the 11 million non-Jews who were murdered in the Holocaust. Let us honor the heroes, the martyrs, the survivors, and the victims. Let us remember that while the sheer numbers may seem too great to grasp, that each one of those lost was a daughter, a son, a mother, or a father.
Today, communities in the United States, in Israel, and around the world observe Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day. For the Jewish community, it is the annual commemoration of 6 million Jews and countless others who were brutally murdered by the Nazi regime. For our Jewish caucus and our capital community, today marks the first time in recent memory that we will observe Yom HaShoah without Holocaust survivors joining us here at the Capitol. In too many places, and especially for too many young people, the Holocaust is fading from view. The Jewish caucus has provided each of you with a printed tweet from the official Auschwitz Memorial Twitter page, which helps to preserve the memory of the 1.1 million people who perished in the death camp at Auschwitz-Birkenau. Each tweet tells the story of a victim of the Holocaust who shares your birthday, a small window into the devastation from which entire families and entire communities never recovered. In my case, it's a tweet about a young boy named Abel Back. On his 4th birthday, Abel was deported from France to Poland. 2 days later, he was killed. When I look at Abel's picture, I can't help but see my son Joshua, who shares my birthday, and Abel's. Josh is an exceptionally sweet and happy kid, a true blessing for our family. And in just a few months, he'll turn 4, which means he's going to be the same age that Abel was when he was stripped from his community, shoved into a cattle car, and pushed into a gas chamber. Like many other Jewish parents, I can't help but wonder if someday somebody will try to hurt Joshua because we're Jewish. You see, for the Jewish community, the Holocaust isn't a distant memory. In the arc of Jewish history, it's a recent event, a particularly devastating chapter in a book filled with painful stories of persecution. Thank you for helping us to honor the memory of those who perished in the Holocaust, and for standing with us as we work to overcome anti-Semitism, hatred, and bigotry of all forms.
Many groups were targeted and persecuted in the Holocaust alongside the Jewish community, including and especially the LGBTQ community. Hitler and the Nazi Party targeted gay men because they believed that they were, quote, unfit to defend the nation in combat and would diminish the German reproductive potential. As we share these stories, we must also recognize that hate is still very much alive and present with us today.
The Holocaust will forever be a stark reminder that we must always look to our past in order to inform our present and the future. We must reflect upon our history, particularly its darkest moments, in order to learn from the tragedies that have befallen humankind and ensure that similar events never happen again. And for each of the members, at least of the Jewish caucus, this is a very personal commemoration because each of us know people from our families who were lost in the Holocaust or who were affected by the Holocaust or who survived the Holocaust. And we stand here today at a time when fewer and fewer individuals who actually experienced the Holocaust remain with us. This is the march of time. It's a fact that we live with. In fact, we honored many of those individuals on this very floor over the years, and many of those people who you met and shook the hands of and thanked for being here are gone. They're not with us any longer.
Today I want to remember someone different, my great-grandmother, Irma. Irma was tiny, smaller than me, which, as all of you know, is saying a lot. And she was one of the most loving people I ever knew. She always had a new beaded necklace for me every time she saw me because she knew I loved it. And I'm standing here today because on November 9th, 1938, Irma bought tickets to the opera. That's it. That's why I'm standing here. They knew Kristallnacht was coming. They knew they were going to be rounded up in Vienna. And so she bought tickets to the Vienna Opera, and they went that evening. They dressed up, and they went to the opera. And so they weren't rounded up. And they found a way out a few months later. And we have stepped up, members, to be leaders in our community, in our state, in our nation. And we must remember our solemn obligation, the obligation that our colleague from Santa Monica just spoke about, to stand up to hate in all of its forms. Because the Holocaust didn't start with people being burned in ovens. That was its culmination. It started with propaganda and hate and my grandmother being kicked out of school because she was no longer worthy to be educated. And then it ended in the lives lost that we speak about today, that you see sitting on your desks.
As we reflect on these frightening times, we must remember to stand with one another and speak out to ensure that these acts of violence on individuals over their backgrounds, their cultures, or their religions will never occur again. We owe it to our communities and future generations to remember our past and learn in order to move forward with respect and compassion for all people. And I'd also like to thank Mr. Levine and Mr. Gabriel and the entire Jewish Caucus for providing us with these framed photos of individuals who share all of our respective birth dates. I may not know anything about Boleslaw Weber, except that he was an electrician and that his fate is unknown as of October 20th, 1942. And I can only imagine, if he does have any survivors, how they feel about never being able to recover where his body lay and how his last minutes were. And it's when we think about that fate of individuals, we want to make sure that that never repeats itself again.
The indescribable events which transpired were rooted in feelings of fear and hate, feelings that continue to persist as we struggle with the ongoing crimes of persecution and discrimination against minorities in many communities. Today, we must stay vigilant against the dehumanization and persecution of those whose only crime is to be different.
It's easy to think about the 6 million Jews, the 11 million murdered innocent people, that we can be overwhelmed by those numbers. And to learn the identities, to see into the innocent smiles, the joyful faces, or the eyes that are in horror in some of the shots of prisoners, whether it be a Polish Olympian, toddlers standing together, or in my case, a 14-year-old boy whose name deserves to be read, Giza Steingeiser from Hungary, who was born on my birthday in 1930 and was murdered after his 14th birthday in 1944 in the gas chamber at Auschwitz. And like my colleague from Woodland Hills, I can't stop but think about my own 14-year-old son who celebrated his bar mitzvah last year. There was another 14-year-old boy. He was a Czech boy born on the 4th of September 1930 named Franta Bass. And he was deported to Theresienstadt ghetto in December of 1941, and he wrote a poem while he was there in that ghetto. He was murdered in October of 1944, but before he was transported to Auschwitz, he wrote this poem at Theresienstadt, and he titled it The Garden. The garden, a little garden, fragrant and full of roses. The path is narrow, and a little boy walks along it. A little boy, a sweet boy, like that growing blossom. When the blossom comes to bloom, the little boy will be no more.
On this day, we must all take time to remember the victims of the anti-Semitic genocide carried out by the Nazi regime years ago and show support for our Jewish brothers and sisters who continue to experience prejudice today. Black people know all too well the cost of white supremacy and the atrocities committed during the Holocaust.
Of the millions that perished during the Holocaust, women were subjected to some of the most inhumane treatment. Mothers were separated from their children and their families, sometimes being forced to choose which one child they would bring with them in a mirage of their ability to be able to save that child, which did not happen. Part of remembering the Holocaust is also remembering the individuals who perished, which is why you have the commemorative plates on your desk today with some of the victims. Today we pay tribute to all the women in their role in one of the darkest chapters in our history. We honor their sacrifice, indomitable strength and spirit. We remember the individual acts of bravery, perseverance, and leadership. And, on this day, every year we say never again, but it is important to remember that we have had 7 worldwide recognized genocides since the Holocaust, and 37 incidents which many argue could rise to the level of genocide. So we need to always be active and deliberate. We need to speak out when we hear Jews on the worldwide stage uniquely called out and uniquely held to a higher standard than other nationalities. We need to recognize when people talk about Jews controlling the media or controlling the banks or being greedy or being rich, that these are the same anti-Semitic tropes that people use to justify the extermination of an entire people. That is what it really means to never forget.
All of us in this room have a special opportunity and a special obligation in the way that we communicate with each other and the policies that advance and the behavior that we model in a diverse, pluralistic, multi-ethnic democracy for how we can work together and make sure that there is nothing like this that ever happens again. And it starts with speaking out early. And so I want to thank all of you for your partnership in this work. I want to thank you for the beautiful comments and helping to memorialize the 6 million Jews and the countless others that were murdered in the Holocaust. And with that, I would respectfully request an aye vote on ACR 56.